if you were to ask a memory practitioner, one that had the same kind of leanings as those who are attending this group, during the Renaissance time, their feelings on a talk such as this, they would see it as a great blessing. Now, why is that? Why would they see this talk as not this education, but perhaps in the more literal sense of the word education? Education means to bring out in. That's because there was a concept and a whole idea at the time that anything that went into your consciousness became you. So, as I talk to you today, and we're traveling through a journey that a memory practitioner seeking enlightenment would have gone through, let's view this as a blessing. Because each and every technique, each improvement to the consciousness, each insight or gift will be becoming part of you. So if you focus with pure intention and press firmly the words I say into your heart, they will remain in your memory and guide you in the future. So just a bit of an introduction. There have always been people who have been memory coaches, people who are there to help you improve your recollection, your imagination, your recall, these kind of facilities. We can see this as a discipline all the way back to a very early Greek tradition, but there are hints of it in other places. During the Renaissance, you had many teachers who would simply be teaching you to improve your memory. You want to make sure that you're still functioning well, that you're good in your job, or that you can recall things to help you function and do well in life. But unlike now, there were also practitioners which offered something more. Their idea of memory was a more evolutionary art, a practice that was said to be able to lead to an upgrade in your consciousness and improvement in everything that's going on there, and a deeper insight. And indeed, that's really quite exciting to know that if you do look at the diaries of people who went through these courses, they do describe the improvements they make actually in those terms. It's almost like the way modernly someone might describe getting a wonderful new computer. They're saying, everything's working fast, everything's clearer, I can remember a lot more, I'm more observant, I'm more awake. This is the kind of feel we get. Indeed, reading through some of these accounts, the positive accounts, it's almost as if I could say to you, right, you're gonna drink a potion that's full of the qualities of Sherlock Holmes and Darren Brown and great linguists and artists, and all mixed together. It's like a potion of human talent and ability, and this is going to have an effect on you. That's really what it feels like. But there were, of course, those who criticised this more hermetic art of memory. Some said that it was too complicated, there's too many images to be added, and you needed a good memory even to practice it. It wasn't useful for people who weren't talented to begin with. There were other people that felt that if you needed to remember something using a special system, it was artificial and false and couldn't be true. But what form of training would you have undergone, and what would be the arrangements? I've actually found some evidence of this. If you went to a memory teacher, if you were training under one of Giordano Bruno's direct students, you would probably be paying in London or Edinburgh 20 shillings. And this is equivalent now of about £4,000. And that would be 3 months of direct tuition with Alexander Dixon or a different student at the time. And then after that tuition, you've got sort of ongoing support. Now, that time is kind of the most questionable of those observations. It seems to be about then, but I think it was probably when you'd got the drift, when you could go and practice on your own. After then, the teacher's definitely supporting you, but you're definitely supporting that teacher. Students were copying out Bruno's works and sending them to him for him to resell. They were sending gifts, they were doing things. I don't know what Bruno charged, but of course, Bruno was teaching royalty and great nobility, and often living at the sort of being supported by others who really believed in his cause. So now we know the kind of arrangements that would be in place, the kind of costs that would happen, and the results that people would report. Let's look at the actual program itself. So be aware that as we go through this, I, by my nature, am a practitioner first and historian second. So every technique that you learn about here, I've practiced with a great sense of joy and enthusiasm. But some of the historical information, I've read in someone's diary that piece of information, or I've read Bruno or Fludd say something, but I haven't gone into cross-referencing and haven't gone into getting the precise sort of context historically. So think of this as a practitioner's guide rather than a historian's review, if you can. So you've found your teacher, you've paid your fees, they are with you once or twice a week, and they're teaching you the technique. During the time, it's important to know that the feel of the training might be a bit different than we would have for our training in spiritual things now. So the same sense of awe, beauty, and respect for a guru or teacher would be there, and the same sense of sacred feel to the teachings that would make you really hold on to them would most certainly be there. So the attitude is about the same as we might feel modernly if we were in a cave in the Himalayas learning some secret sort of yoga techniques, or if we had a sacred a book that we were just reading for the first time and had never been opened before. But rather than the sense of discipline that you might have, maybe you've got a sense of booking in sort of your meditation twice a day, or maybe you've got a sense of doing something every day because of discipline and for good character and so on. This would be a passion that you would be looking forward to, you'd be excited about. Just imagine, get that kind of feel going as we start this journey, that there's nothing more exciting than this. You'd be waiting for some spare time when you had a chance. You'd be going away and doing this exercise, really studying in depth and really sharing this with others as well. So this is an important thing, is to get that kind of enjoyment feel. Likewise, at the time, there were different associations and different connections with memory. So before you can see this woodcut. It's been coloured in and very beautifully illustrated. And you can see that it's of some splendid looking fellows, wonderfully dressed, sitting around a table. Now they're all here contemplating a picture before them. Now this is actually from a very late emblem, but the reason I've chosen to put this here is because it illustrates the kind of sense that they had towards memory. This group here are in fact Freemasons, and they're contemplating what would now be called a tracing board. Above them, you can see the Eye of Providence, and it's shining a beam of light into a mirror. And in that light, there's a Latin quote that translates as, "The light shone in the darkness." And out of the mirror, there's the second half of that biblical quote, "And the darkness comprehended it not." This kind of practice was very prevalent in the Renaissance times, and it wasn't just within the Hermetic or Rosicrucian traditions. It was actually something many people would contemplate emblems for their own betterment. Before you, there's an obvious display of their associations with this. First of all, they're together and they're looking at these pictures which have connections. The symbols are connections with moral lessons. So there's this sense of you can improve who you are. Second of all, the mirror is representing how somehow you'll learn more about yourself through this process. And finally, the light shining down is showing the concept of enlightenment. And this is really important to get across. The words meditation and enlightenment are Western words. They come from Latin, and we may use them modernly in association with Eastern traditions more commonly than we do with Western, but their meaning's a bit different. So enlightenment was something that you could receive. A light could come into you. You could gain a influence or be in tune with an influence that would illuminate you through memory. To try to understand this and to sort of lock this into your associations, the easiest way is just to think in terms of this. Memory at the time meant anything you could form in your consciousness. Yes, it also referred to recollection, but memory could be used for invention. To invent something, you put an inventory of all the things that had already been designed, and then you'd finish that off, you'd carry on going, you'd muse on it till it was formed. And it had the associations that we would modernly have with visualization or auto-suggestion. Whatever you imagined would sort of have an influence on you and would become part of your thinking. In some texts, they even use the term meditatio, sometimes meditatio mnemonica, or memnethau, meditation of memory. So this was a meditative art. Some would have practiced, like you see sitting here, in a group and discuss things, but more commonly, they would have imitated the practices in the church, where you would be in a seated posture and have your head down, and this would be how you'd practice your contemplation. There are some memory practitioners of this day which are still a bit medieval. They'll lie down, and it goes in sort of different positions for different memory practices to lying down. So the practitioners of the time would have that as a given, that memory can bring a sense of transformation. Memory can help you know your true nature, and memory can lead to illumination from higher forces or higher awareness. During this talk, I'm going to draw on two great memory masters. Memory masters you may or may not have heard of. Robert Fludd, Robertus Fluctibus, as he used to like to call himself. He was a Paracelsian physician. So everything for Robert Fludd was about resonance and about connection. It was all about harmonies and being in tune and inviting the right harmonies in. And all his memory art was based on this. Robert Fludd, of course, not only wrote books on memory, but he wrote books in defense of the Rosicrucians. It's very interesting if you read what he says. You can learn a lot from someone when they're defending something, because it gives you their position. Then we have the Italian, Giordano Bruno. Giordano, or Bruno, used to like to be called the Nolan. He came across to England and even met Queen Elizabeth. And his memory art, by contrast, is very focus-like. It's very Zen. It's about your ability to keep an image, to maintain a discipline. Now, I have memorized the principles of both practitioners, so they can be your genuine teachers through this process, allowing you to have a clear vision of the syllabus ahead. And let's start that syllabus. So I've called the first stage in training meeting mnemosyne. Mnemosyne, of course, is the goddess of memory in the Greek tradition. And the advice I'm about to list is straight from these practitioners. And we could see this as the beginning. This would be the neophyte. This would be the beginner's practices in memory during this time. Incidentally, when the Neoplatonic philosopher Apollonius of Tyana met with the Brahmins in India, when he explained his practices, they said, "Oh, so you follow the goddess of memory too, like us?" And they gave him 7 magic rings to commemorate the meeting. And people have taken these to be literal magic rings. But I think they're probably the chakras, because of course each chakra is a temple, a memory palace in its own sense. So this idea of paying respect to mnemosyne being part of your practice is very ancient. Almost all of these teachings would have a certain philosophical background and allegorical representation. If you were learning from Robert Fludd or one of his students, you would hear Hermetic references and Neoplatonic aspects expressed, but everything was put in terms of Christianity. The idea that remembrance was important is expressed repeatedly in the Bible. In particular, there's a section of the New Testament, I think it's Corinthians, where you're told to be like a master builder and build yourself into a sort of temple fit for the Holy Spirit. This was taken to mean a memory palace practice. There were certain psalms which were really mused upon, and certain sections of the Song of Solomon. Amongst all the trees in the forest, there is the apple, and amongst all the men that are is my beloved. I sat under the shadow of he whom I adored, and the fruits were very sweet. This is a quote which we'll come back to, which very much influences this practice of memory from a Christian symbolic point of view. If you were practicing under Bruno, you'd get enough Christian references to probably make sure that you understood what was being said, but his main focus is Hermetic and Neoplatonic. The whole concept that everything is formed of consciousness is central. So from the Hermetic point of view, what you imagine in your mind is just a gentle version of what really is touchable around you. Divinity can create with a far greater force than you can. However, if you train yourself, you can start to move towards having more influence with your thoughts. So from the Hermetic point of view, a memory is some formation of consciousness in you. An influence which would affect the outside world is just when you create a memory in the world soul, in the group subconscious. A memory palace and a magic circle really become one in this practice. So it's very much drawn from there. You see in Hermetic texts references to imprinting on your consciousness the memory of the divine blessings of Pymander. You see references to creating of statues. These statues, of course, were seen as inner statues you would create that would have blessings and influence. So these are the kind of philosophical backgrounds you'll see in your practice. That tells you the why. Let's move to the what. As soon as you started training, there would be some changes suggested to your life. And these aren't practices that you would be doing in your spare time. This would be a change to how you did everything. So one piece of advice that we see very strongly and repeatedly made clear is the idea of being fully involved in things. If we look around us, there are different levels of commitment that people make to their actions. And the outcome of that is very, very different. So if you fully engage, then you improve. And that's why we have a concept of practice and lessons, which are different than our normal day-to-day activity. Look at people who've been doing things, jobs, all their life, or for many years, and you'll often see that there's very little improvement. So someone can work in the same role for many years. They could be a barman in a pub, and they still make the same mistakes. They still go to the wrong drawer when someone asks for something. They still give the wrong change. That's actually quite mysterious, because if you took anything else and you practiced it for that amount of time, let's say 10 years, 8 hours a day, you would be world class. If you practice archery for 8 hours a day for 10 years, you would be doing trick shots and bouncing the arrows off walls, and you'd be amazing. If you practice, if two of us here, if I met with you when we practiced juggling for an hour a day, it would probably only take 3 months before we could put on a very impressive show. So there's something not engaged in the day-to-day life that's preventing the genuine opening of your ability and the improvement in that respect. So the aim is to change your attitude to make everything fully engaged. Everything's you're going to be improving. Peculiar enough, it's not saying what I was tempted to say there is make everything practice. It's saying the opposite. Nothing is unimportant. There's no trivialities. There's no rehearsal. You're fully engaged. When you talk to someone, that's your eloquence practice. When you write your signature at the bottom of a check or letter, that's calligraphy. When you chop your vegetables for cooking, you're going to do this with such precision. And because this all combines, you start to notice improvements on different levels. So imagine how those different things would combine, and someone who was a fencer would suddenly be a lot better, but they wouldn't know why. Because their fine motor skills in their calligraphy class, the precision of the cuts in their knife, the sensitivity in the conversation means that suddenly they're very talented. So if you get the hang of this, then you've got an amazing blessing. And the keys that are given vary. If you're talking to Fludd, you're going to put kindness into everything. When you're cleaning the floor, you're cleaning it because you love your family and you want them to have this lovely floor to walk on, and you want order and so on, and you're going to carefully move as there's a ladybird there and put it out. It's all going to be, every word has good intentions. When you're giving a talk, you're doing it because you want this to be a blessing for everyone, a blessing for mankind. This kindness is going to keep you engaged. For Bruno, it really is far more of an awareness issue. So in his, you've probably seen his wheels. In his intention wheel, the letter R is about keeping awareness, keeping awake, keeping all time. Keep the later on, and his T letter is very much about keep your brightness up, keep your intensity up with things. So this is very much a will-based practice. But both of them, they come together eventually. You know, that just one starts with the head and ends up with unifying with the heart. One starts with the heart that unifies with the head. With Fludd, you're going to be trying to connect with all the positive things. So you are like, you're panning for gold in life. When a lesson comes along, it could be an 8-year-old, it could be a great teacher, you're going to listen if it's wise. If it's the right person, you're going to really be a great friend for them. Everything it's going to be genuine. You're panning for gold. You learn to just let the other thing, the dirt wash away. And this, of course, leads directly to this pay attention to things. So observing the small details in things. For Bruno, this was the next step, and he really thought you could connect with the underlying nature of things by observation. If you could see the pattern in the physicality and the pattern in the hidden qualities, maybe the mental qualities, then you could put those together in your awareness and make the third. You could see the higher hidden qualities. Really, if someone's talking to you, you're 100% there. When you're eating, you're 100% eating. Now, let's just stop here for a second and just think what it would be like meeting someone who actually did this. So every meal they eat, they're fully engaged, make the decision that this is the ideal fuel and blessing for their body. Imagine what someone who did that would look like. When they're talking to someone, they're adapting to that person. They're using all the knowledge they've got to be eloquent and engaged. Whenever they do something, they're improving on this level. Someone who managed to get this down would be a very impressive person indeed, and would really shine. They'd really stand out in the world. The next piece of advice is probably more relevant to us now than it was then. Always use a chance to train your memory and use your mind. If you're driving and you've gone to that place twice, it's time to turn that sat nav off and use your mind. If there's a mathematical puzzle that appears in your life as an equation, you do know how to do it. Do it. There's no use walking with crutches when you can run. So fully embrace that opportunity. Someone asks you to remember a list of things to get, make that memory list part of your practice. Don't take the easy way. Let go of artificial aids as much as possible. So this appears actually in private correspondence quite often. Don't write down lists. Don't rely on other people. You get a lot of that when you're advising nobility. Don't rely on other people for names or for events or that kind of thing. If you find yourself looking something up more than twice, mnemosiny is saying, memorize this. So you're going to make a method to memorize it. You're going to enjoy putting that in. And again, from the Fludd point of view, you're going to invite that blessing in. You're putting in your mind what has resonance. Have you ever seen circumstances when there's a question asked about the past, and the person who's been asked this gives up straight away. Someone says, "Oh, where did we go on holiday last year? What was that village we went to first?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's look it up." Or, "What did you get me for Christmas or last year? I don't know." This tendency to just let go when someone asks a question is actually often caused by fear of failure and a sense of being overwhelmed. Often, we're asking for too much information at once from our long-term memory. This is like me going into a librarian's sort of a desk, up to a librarian in the library and saying, "I like every single non-fiction book you've got on history. Can you get them for me?" Whoa! They're going to immediately try to focus in, aren't they? They're going to say, "Oh, okay, what area of history do you really want?" Because they can't just carry that much straight. But we do expect that of our memories sometimes. We say, "Right, last Christmas, I can't remember any of it." So when someone asks you a past event, or when you need to know a past event, enjoy that opportunity to practice your long-term file retrieval. You'll get better at it. So stop and think, right, we went on holiday last year. Yes. Okay. What was the first village? We obviously went to France. What's the first village? What did we do there? I actually remember booking it. I remember what we had for breakfast before we got off the cruise boat. If you keep honing in on what you do know and let your mind feed it to you in small chunks, you'll start to move that process forwards. Every single time you do it, you are making your long-term memory better. Now, this is important from the Hermetic point of view because there's a sense that the part of you that connects with ideas in your own consciousness can also connect with ideas beyond. And this is also important for your functioning in the world. And for the way you're going to bring the best to the world. So it's really worth doing this. And finally, once the person has got some of these habits down, they'd often have the teacher with them for a little bit more during this beginning period. We start to use natural memory palaces. If you want to learn about something, go with the order which is presented before you. So you want to learn about botany. Go through your garden. Choose your route. Maybe you're going to walk around clockwise. Walk up to the first plant. What is the name of that plant? What does it do? What's it in Latin? What's it like? And then, once you've got that, move to the second one. Use whatever's naturally there. If you want to connect more with a group you're a member of, get the group photo and go through each person in order. Use the things that are presented to you in order to practice without that. This way, you're working with how things are. Bruno, in his first and second wheel, describes these. In one case, he's talking about species, and I think it's a hint. There's a bit in the Hermetic about contemplating natural life. Another time, he's talking about a lightning bolt. You can see the lightning bolt going through the whole structure of things. So work with the structure. You want to learn about the human body, you can go through and use your body as a memory palace, memorizing what every bone is called, what every organ does, that kind of thing. So once you've got this first stage in place, you're going to be able to move a little bit further in your practice. And now we come to some wonderfully beautiful exercises. Now, if you read Renaissance texts, it's really valuable when they spell something out. Often they're giving you the principle for you to just run with. In this case, this is one that is spelt out, and it's one that's historically been echoed through Neoplatonic works and through historical texts. So we know that the Pythagoreans had a beautiful practice. The Pythagorean meditation involves a discipline just before you retire every evening. What you're going to do is, before you go to bed, you're going to make sure you sit up nice and straight. Don't try this lying down, otherwise you'll start to drift off. And you're going to go through the whole day in your imagination, starting with when you woke up and going through each point. And you're going through it from a point of view of remembering, but you're also giving yourself a boost to everything you did well and a little bit of an adjustment if there's something that needs improvement. Could you have done that better? Could you have done this strategically better? This is a beautiful, powerful practice. It has all the blessings that you get from normal meditation. It does take quite a bit of focus, but it's a wake-up call and it's a regeneration for the mind. Not only do you find yourself going through every conversation or everything you read, so the information gets an echo, and we do know that spaced information is really important for long-term memory, but also you'll see things you've never noticed before. You'll see the gaps in your life. You'll see mistakes you're making again and again, or things where just a small adjustment would lead to outstanding, wonderful success. It's been working, that just an amplification would make it work in a really, really impressive way. As you practice your Pythagorean meditation and time goes on, you'll start to add detail. And it's good to hone in on whatever you find tricky. So if you're working on a cultivation of a particular virtue or ability, put that in. If you forget people's names, it's going to be names that are going to be recalled as a sort of priority. If you're bad with dates, start the whole repetition with the date and put it in place. This is a natural filing system. And you find that you often observe the same thing again. Nothing challenged this aspect of my mind today, or I didn't pass on the feelings I had to this person today. It will help you fine-tune your life in a way that it's never been possible before. At the end of that session, you may want to really just fix in your intention how you're going to do this thing better, or what things you're going to amplify the next day. There's also another lovely side effect. Do you remember when you were young and time seemed a bit slower then? You know, summer would last forever and things just didn't move so quickly. If you practice this, I'm not sure what it is, but it brings that effect back. And you're experiencing all the things twice and amplifying them. And I think also it makes you make changes so there's more variation in your life. Now, this practice was often advised, but in alternative circumstances, you'd see a slightly different way of doing things. Now, this isn't the name that's given to it. This is my construction. And the reason I've done this is that in some of the descriptions of memory, they use Druidry as a symbolism or authority from the past, because the Druids, of course, were superb with their memory. So if you're not doing your Pythagorean meditation, you might be doing a memory walk, a Druid memory walk. And what you're going to be doing is, once a day, you're going to leave your house and you're going to be walking in a state of pure receptive awareness. And you're going to make note of everything. Door on the left, number 21, red. Car over, 3 cars in a row, red, green, blue. Curb broken, wasn't broken yesterday. And you're going to do so with a sense of affixing this in your memory. Now, this can be quite overwhelming to begin with. And it's a serious practice to do. And here's a bit of advice. If you do want to memorize a series of streets in your town or village, Make sure your timing is right and you're not too conspicuous, because people do start to look at you a bit strange if you walk past the house every day, so scanning it for every detail. They start to wonder. And I don't think it's very easy to explain. Now, I'm not checking your house out for any purpose. I'm memorizing the street. I think they'll be reassured by that. This is a big exercise, but it's refreshing and it's really good for the mind. Some practitioners recommend investigation of anything you don't know. What is that tree? What is that plant? Who's at number 9? I don't know how practical that is now. I think it's worth doing a bit, but really the observation aspect is the most important. Interesting enough, one here I would like to mention that modern studies show that memory practice does increase awareness and response speed in people. We're not sure what the connection is, but these are united. In addition to the above, you would be gifted with some wonderful tools for your practice. You would learn how to make memory images. Memory images are whereby you create a hook in your imagination for something you wish to recall. Before us, we can see that donkey. Oh, bless him, he looks a bit down in the dumps, doesn't he? Well, he's upset because he's been told he's worthless. He represents naught. But leave him, the number 1, as a spear. You can see that's a really brilliant representation of 1. We've got a fork or pair of scissors for 2. We've got a stool for 3. This pin system would be memorized, and you choose your own, really. So there's some that are rhyming: 1 sun, 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 door, 5 hive. There's some that, like this, are kind of implements. And how are you going to use them? Well, a memory image needs to be emotional. It can be shocking, it can be rude, it can be silly, it can be grotesque, it can be funny. You've got to make it memorable. So once you've got your pin system, if someone asked you to memorize a shopping list, you'd put it all in there together. So someone said, right, I want you to buy fish, to buy bread, and to buy milk. You say, right, fish, spear, stabbing the fish in the water works well. Okay, bread, it's not sliced bread, so I'm going to have to chop it up with, I'm going to use a pair of scissors on it. Milk, okay, I'm going to be the milkmaid. Actually, that fits really well. So when you get to the shops, you're going to have no trouble because you know the pins, they're in there. So you say pin, right, spear, oh, I was stabbing fish. Scissors, I was cutting bread. Oh, on the stool, I was the milkmaid. I was the person milking. Brilliant. There are other ones for letters that you'd learn to associate. If you were studying under Fludd or Bruno, you would have ones with very deep associations for some things, but not to desecrate certain areas. You would have other pins. Please be aware that when I say not to desecrate certain areas, Bruno is quite capable of using very deep Kabbalistic associations or writing a whole version of the incantations of Circe in order to be able to memorize things using their letters, memorizing speeches. So it's really down to your judgment. I think for Bruno, all things became quite holy in the end. In addition to that, you'd be learning how to use images in a creative way. If you wanted to remember someone's name, you would naturally make an image for them. So let's say John Smith as a random name. You would imagine, hello, John, you'd use that image. Maybe there's a John you know that could be being made by a Smith. Maybe if you're American, you'd have different associations with John you could put in there to make it really memorable with the whole Smith making someone. If it was Mr. Cooper, you would imagine him walking in a barrel. Remember, you've got to make the images shocking, silly, amusing. Somehow you're going to do things which are going to stand out to you. If you wanted to remember another name, Jack Love, you'd most certainly use a Jack sort of which was lifting a bed which had a couple on it or something like that. And if you can tie that with the person you're meeting somehow, this is even more powerful. If you meet Michelle, you could imagine her nose like a shell or something like that. Martin, my tin, you could imagine his head like a baked bean tin. Now, if you were studying under Fludd, you wouldn't ever use an image which was random like that. It would be a blessing for everyone you meet. So if you met John Bruce, you would imagine him with the strength of Robert the Bruce. If you met John Paternoster, you'd imagine that he had this holy image behind the rosary. You'd do something so you'd bless the person, and you remember to do that every time you met them because you're wanting to create positive resonance with people. And so the images you're making are automating your kind intentions towards the world. And if you were training under Fludd, you'd also believe that the name does have a symbolism to it. You'd actually think that Gary healed, he might have some healing insight. You might believe that if you met someone and the name stood out for a reason, it was guided in that way because nothing is chance. You'd also learn how to use these nested images, like they call it an epitome. On the side there, this is an epitome of one of the Gospels. So you can layer images up. You want to remember a biography, you imagine the person as a statue, they're holding in the hand a book because they wrote a book, they're standing on Chichester Cathedral because they came from Chichester, they've got a noose in their hand because they were hanged. You'd learn to make more complicated images than I'm listing here. So this, once you perfected all this, you really would have completed your neophyte. And bear in mind that most people in these days will be far better at memory than us to begin with. This would be very basic stuff. And they didn't have anything to aid them with remembering things in the same way we have. There's no diary on their phone going ting, telling them when it's someone's anniversary or that kind of thing. So this would be a lot easier for them during those days. So now that your consciousness is more powerful, the mind stuff has become strong. From the Hermetic point of view, this brain is just a receiver. This force, this underlying energy of consciousness has to become more malleable, but also more stable, more intense. Your practice has got you to the place where you can start to move to the next level. Your journeyman of memory. Here, you can see a beautiful depiction. This is the castle of memory. This is from a 14th century work. This shows how the whole castle in the mind is made of virtues. And that's really important because in this step, we're going to be focusing on your character. Before you can move to accepting higher consciousness, you need to balance and to heal yourself. Within your personality, there are aspects which maybe they didn't get a chance to grow up fully when you were young. Maybe you never learned that certain thing. Maybe you used some strategy too much. Maybe you could imagine someone was aggressive through school and it worked. They went on to become an accountant and aggression worked, or stockbroker. But they can't be tender and gentle. That strategy's all they've got now. Maybe you were hurt. Maybe there was something that happened when you were young and you thought, right, close down that section. I'm not having friends. Close that, actually, I'm not going to open up. Every time I open up, someone mocks me. So maybe there's areas of you that are still, just like your shoulder goes into spasm to protect itself with an injury, there's part of your personality like that. Maybe there's some areas that just aren't in your control. All that is going to be harmonized and reintegrated in this step as you master your consciousness, and your training is going to become more intense. You are going to learn to make memory palaces. These are buildings that you would walk around in your imagination, using all your senses. You would make sure that you could feel that handle when you opened the door, that you knew the sense when you went into the front room. You'd make sure that your feet moving on the floor, you imagined the noise. These memory palaces would be mundane. The earliest memory palace instructions published in English is from the early 1300s and describes using your own house as a memory palace, but having one in every color of the rainbow, so that you've got 7 memory palaces in one. But they would also be sacred. Maybe you'd have certain designs you'd call on. Maybe you'd have certain places you could visit and walk through again and again. The goal is that you repeat going through the same route every single time. So you're going to stop at the same location. That's called a location, but in Greek, the word would be topic. And you keep your pilgrimage going with the same stops, so that each stop is part of your filing system, which you would use just like those pins we mentioned. So you'd walk into your front door, or to your front door, and you'd open that, location 1. You'd go through into your porch. There's the coat hangers on the left, location 2. You carry on through into your living room. There's a settee, location 3. Location 4, maybe a painting on the wall, that kind of thing. Maybe you go back, the next stop is you're going to be going into the dining room and it's going to be your table. This is your filing system to put images in. Incidentally, as an aside, Bruno's big secret was that each of his locations had not only the subject, but they had an adjunct, they had an object in there too. So he would go to the front door and there'd be a wreath on there. And he'd go through into the coat and there'd be coat hangers and there'd be a cane hanging. He had objects which would help whatever you wanted to memorize. You could make a scene of it. If he was memorizing a knight and it was in the location of his front door, he'd take up the wreath for making his shield. If he was memorizing a baker and it was in the location of those coat hangers, he'd take down the cane and use it as to roll. So this was how he did it. But what are we using these for at this stage? Well, first and foremost, you're going to be memorizing things where you lack. And this is a really important thing to express, which I don't think modernly is ever explored. There is a concept that your mind is always trying to help you. So when you're thinking about something, it's searching through all your memory to try to put the information together to give you your opinion or give something from the past. But most people are educated in a very confused, higgledy-piggledy way. But you could change this. If you put together a memory palace of logic, so every single principle of truth, every syllogism, every thinking method that does result in the correct truth observation into a memory palace, suddenly your mind has been super equipped. Previously, up until this point in your life, when you've been thinking, is this true? It's been going, right, is this true? I saw a similar example of this truth principle expressed when I was 10, and it's been expressed 7 times since. Is this true? I've seen an example of this mentioned by someone, but not. For the first time ever, you've just given it a memory palace, so it's in order, with the interconnected principles. Suddenly, you will be able to see the truth in a superhuman way. So you'll be memorizing palaces of the things that you need to gain. If you want inspiration, you have a memory palace of the muses. If you want to speak more eloquently, you'll be having a memory palace as every persuasion method. Once it's in your mind in a nice ordered way, your mind will use you. Your mind, is your greatest ally. It will help you with this. It will use it. Most important, of course, would be the method of communicating this kind of thing to your to the mind that's going to help you, to the deep mind. Now, I've just put a few here in front of you. Here's some nice emblems. Some people will recognize them. There was a sense that an image like this, an emblem, which would be a picture and a phrase or poem next to it, sometimes a bit more, could lead to a lesson going in with more strength. It's more memorable and it speaks to a different aspect of yourself. Emblems more or less have the same kind of position as mandala in the kind of meditation stakes. You're going to sit there and you're really going to muse on it. You're going to puzzle them out. And there were many different emblems to be drawn from. The whole concept that an image put into your mind could change who you are was very old. This is a text called Disuai Logai. It's a parody of the Sophism, and it was published 422 BC, or rather published. This is the extant volumes. I said hint that it came from there. And in this text, which is probably written to make a point, Disuai Logai is opposing views. It's when you take on the views of someone else to sort of understand them or to argue that their position instead of yours for a deeper insight. It has a section that teaches the art of memory. And it really is a complete guide to memory. And it has this association whereby wisdom and conduct and the idea that you can change your mind by putting the right image in there. And the examples they give are, if you want to be more heroic, you could memorize Achilles, all the different symbolism behind everything he wears and does and all the stories behind him. If you wanted to be more noble and brave, you could imagine yourself as a lion here. So this is a very old concept. Images can go in your mind, it can transform you. And indeed, this had been really thought about and experimented with within the Christian practice of memory. St. Thomas Aquinas, here he is standing before you. If you haven't read St. Thomas Aquinas, do. He is a genuine practitioner. He's certainly on the path and a very wise and positive person. He felt that the reason why you needed a symbol, you needed an image to do this, was because your mind wasn't set up to learn just from intentions and thoughts. You needed something to hook onto. So just as you're more likely to learn from experience, if you do something and there's a great reward, it's far more likely you'll repeat it than if someone just tells you there'll be a great reward. We're more likely to respond to things if there's a genuine experience, whether that's a good one or an unpleasant one. So making this symbol as a key to your vow, a key to your change inside, is going to allow you to hold on to it in a very special way. Now, of course, St. Thomas Aquinas' teacher, Albert Magnus, Albert the Great, he went even further. He said that the method that brought around this change was through a mechanism which was natural. This mechanism would be if you had a big experience, if you got bitten by a wolf, this is an actual example he gives, then it's going to be with you forever. There's no learning needed. You don't need to go over that and think, oh, what went wrong in that circumstance? You're going to avoid that wood from now on. You're going to be more cautious. The same is true with a memory image. So What he felt was happening was it was going into something called your estimative power or estimative ability. This is like your subconscious or your deep mind. They didn't have those terms. It's like your animal mind. And if you could do the same here with an angel. So if you meditated on the angel of truth and you imagined her beauty and you imagined symbolism behind, and this is what they do. They go into every feather would have a little line or poem and a meaning. If you imagine the symbolism behind what she's wearing, what she's doing, you would achieve a oneness which would be as strong as that wolf biting you. You would only speak the truth from then on. And this sense that you're speaking the truth would be a very positive thing and would lead to an improvement on many levels comes across. Just think about that, about the power that would come with that. People around you would know that if you spoke, it was true. And this is instinctive. So that's the mechanism they're looking for when you're memorizing emblems and putting them in your memory palace or putting them in the pin list that is normally in that sort of in those emblems. Now, I just want to mention Fludd and Bruno's approach here. This part of your training was called the square art. The square art is when you're going to balance earth, air, fire, and water. You are going to be as fiery and ambitious as you are watery and emotional and adaptive. You're going to be as intellectually expansive and full of wisdom and understanding as air, but as solid and practical as earth. Here you can see the fortress of health here. And Homo Sanus, the healthy man, is praying to the archangels. We've got Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel there. And they're repelling the negative beings here, which are sort of disease and so on coming towards them. This is a memory palace which would help you square your personality. And you would know everything. You'd really be going to a state of oneness. We'll go into this a bit later on with each of these angelic figures, and their blessings would become a part of you. You would need to change yourself to meet their lessons to keep moving forwards. On the other side, we have a square art practice by Bruno. Each one of these gardens has a person, an animal, an elemental activity of sorts, whether it's having a fire or hunting a game or something like that. We've got these different practices. So you're kind of going through the 4 areas of the Garden of Eden and becoming one with those elements there. But these emblems and the tradition of emblems just didn't appear from nowhere. They actually evolved. And the earliest expression that we have of these in Europe are in some beautiful texts known as bestiaries. Bestiaries would be a beautiful manuscript that if you were wealthy enough and literate enough to read, would tell you about animals. And here in bestiaries, fact and fiction and memorableness all mix up a little bit. So you can probably see up there this spotty looking cat creature with his mouth open. This is a panther. And as everyone knows, just like they knew in the medieval times, panthers are multicolored rainbow creatures which emit a beautiful scent from their mouth, which calms and relaxes all the animals apart from the most dastardly animals, the dragons. Then we have a cinnamon log bird there. That's what the man is about to hit, the only bird that can gather cinnamon. Now you've got to knock him off his perch, but you can't kill him or there's going to be no other sources of cinnamon. Next, you can see what looks like a bull there with curly horns. He's looking very upset. He's defending himself. That's the bonacon. The bonacon, of course, quite a rare animal, but he can defend himself he can actually fire flames from his rear end or or flaming dung to keep you away. I'm sure some of you have seen those in the woodlands in England. Then we have the noble Yale. The Yale can move his different horns in different ways, so he can sword fight with you, and he can do amazing things. He can jump off cliffs and land on his horns and just bounce back up. We then have the salamander. He's so cool, the salamander. He can even walk around in fire. The bear. This is a bear with their babies. It was believed that bears' babies didn't have a form and you had to lick them into shape. That's where that saying comes from. And finally, the adder, putting his tail in his ears like adders do so that he can't be charmed. Now, each one of these had a biblical lesson. So you would memorize them. You'd know that kindness, and the kindness particularly of Jesus Christ, would allow all people to be your friends. If they weren't your friends, they were the most evil, like the dragon. If you were austere and detached, like the salamander, all negative things would not affect you. You would be immune. This was very much inspired. There are sections of the Bible, you can see I put a quote from Job here that said that you could learn from nature. So that's what they were doing. But we do know that medieval practitioners and ladies of stature are particularly well known to have done this, would use these for lists. You want to remember all the people coming to a party, all the people that were at a certain event or a historical thing. It's very easy if you know your list of animals to put them in. Just like our pin system, you can imagine your Lady Catherine is riding in on the panther, and you can imagine that the Duke is going to be hit at the tree like the cinema log. So this was used like that. These bestiaries evolved and bounced around through Europe, and by the time they got back to the British Isles, they'd changed into something different. This is a beautiful set of emblems, and emblems could come in a book that you had, or they could be paintings that were framed in your pocket, or cards. You keep them close to your heart. This is your path of spiritual development in symbols. And you can see the antecedent, the bestiary still expressed here. Good fortune will with him abide, who have virtue as his guide, tells us the griffin. You can see some other symbols, which are the Pegasus, of course, who's the muse horse and nothing gets in the way. But you can see other things like the heart of him that is upright in heavenly knowledge takes delight. You're going to be more happy when your heart's full of delight. Fludd would have loved this, wouldn't he? Good hopes we best accomplish may by labouring in a constant way. The compasses here being constant as a symbol. So this set of symbols I'm showing you here, this isn't for anything but character development. This is not this would be a practice that any Renaissance gentleman, any gentleman during this time would have. We know couples would buy sets of cards or books together and use them. We know groups would do this together. So this was a very important part of this tradition. But there were also deeper emblems. This lovely book, if you haven't got this, you should. Daniel Kramer's, this is the Rosicrucian Emblems. This is, I think it's 40 different emblems, the process that your heart is going to go through. You remember how I said Fludd and Rosicrucianism are very close? Fludd's very heart-based. This is very heart-based. Your heart is your evolution, and each one of these symbols is your teacher. And what you're going to be doing is musing on these every day, and you're going to kind of get the plot of the story of the heart first. Then you're going to go for each one of them, and you're going to be thinking, what are you telling me? What do I have to change? What do I need to do? And there's lots of detail, and you're going to puzzle it out. You might have friends you're going to puzzle it out with. And it's going to be easy because, of course, you've memorized them. It would be, we know that the memory aspect was part of it because we've even got notes on the back of some of these things with people saying, I've memorized them, they're planted in the mind like seeds, this is going to, so this is a practice which would give expectation of great evolution. Now, just to show you the kind of variation on things, sometimes you would get emblem books which were multimedia. This Atlantia Fugens, this is Atalantia is the huntress, Fugens is running. This is so it's a story of the huntress running, and it's sort of based on the myth of Atalantia. But this is an alchemical set of symbols to meditate on. So the idea is that you are going through the alchemical evolution. You're going to evolve yourself. Each one of these doesn't just have a sentence to muse on. It's got a whole description to really start you off. But it's also got a fugue. It's got a piece of music that your friend would play. So you'd look at the pictures. You'd have read the description. You'd really contemplate while he plays the music. This is a guided meditation. This is the first guided meditation with music, I think. The picture up there of the man with the giant compasses, he's making the philosopher's stone. You put a man and woman in a circle, in a square, and put a triangle around it. There we are. And here's the salamander has reappeared in a slightly different form and a slightly different lesson. Now we're moving very far forwards. I just wanted to show you this. This is the secret symbols of the Rosicrucians. If you are in the SRIA, we have a copy of this amazing text, which has far more illustrations than others have in them. If you are a member of Seshen, please have a look at some of these symbols and see if they remind you of anything else. Franz Baden was having his students at one point contemplate these symbols with guidance. So this text is an amazing, complete path to Rosicrucian regeneration and adepthood in symbols that you would be working through in the same manner as I described. You would be painting these with your mind. You'd be putting them in your creative memory to lead to improvements and changes. It really is a wonderful work. If you're interested in a modern expression of this, these are my own Death of Hades pack. So this is a series of different cards, and this is really bringing that card practice sort of back, which will lead to an upgrade in your consciousness and a movement towards your adepthood or eudaimonia through contemplation. Do have a look for the link after talk. Now, I just wanted to share these pictures here to show you a little bit about the relation of what's going on here. The first, this square art is focused on virtue. So you're making yourself a fit container for higher consciousness. To begin with, you've got to do the basics. You're going to make sure that you're aware, you're good intentioned, you're speaking the truth, you're awake in what you're doing, you're fastidious, that you have the virtues that would make a balanced person. You need to do this because you're preparing for other things. So this would be your square art. Then we'll be moving towards the next stage, which is a curved art, which is going to be, instead of focusing on the elements that are within you, you're going to be drawing higher inspiration and powers. So up until now, everything we're doing is normally within the confines of what most people would believe is psychologically possible. And we've already talked about how spectacular that would be in itself, but now we're really going into areas beyond that. Remembering oneness. So here we are. This emblem here is actually from a book on health and how illnesses can be caused internally, but they used to hide things so wonderfully then. And this is showing the rays of light from above, shining from above. So we're moving into what the person's done, who has got those four elements in balance. And all the stages are in this diagram, but in particular, this idea of rays from above. When they're talking about from above, they don't literally mean from the stars, though that can be a conduit. And both Fludd and Bruno clearly state this. So in Bruno's texts on the conceptions of the sun wheel, the letter O saying you can use the stars and you can even stand in those rays and meditate on them, but you're looking to get the idea behind it. So this is the whole concept that in this world of consciousness, there are original ideas. You could become at one with love. You could become at one with beauty. You could become at one with strength. Your memory palace is going to be curved, and it will probably be based on the planets. Your teacher is going to be guiding you directly. And this is good because they will be in tune with the forces that you're going to be in tune with. So if you sit together and you're forming your memory theatre, this is Giulio Camilo's memory theatre. The stage is the elements, this amphitheatre are the planets. If you're sitting next to someone who can become at one with a underlying principle, you will tune into that and pick up, and it's what being learning by example, direct transmission. You've probably seen this in mundane things. If you want to learn to do something and you go next to someone who's excellent at it, that rubs off. There's other parts of you learning at the same time. How is it going to work? Now, this is a really important principle and really exciting to talk about. The diagram here is, once again, Robert Fludd. So we are talking a little bit from the Fludd point of view, but both used the same terminology, contraction. If you are studied and well knowledgeable of the Oriental traditions, you're probably aware of the idea that you could achieve oneness, i.e. samadhi, through meditation. That is what they're talking about in terms of contraction. Contraction is when you reach out with your mind on a subject and you open your heart and you become at one with it. Now, this process isn't just in your meditation. You're going to have to do it in your life as well. In this picture, that original idea, that light, that blessing is shining on both hearts, but one of them's closed, the other one's open. Now, this probably was inspired by a text or a quote which is in the works of Plotinus in Marsilio Ficino's translation, which says, when the mind of a person shines towards a thing which is higher than it, there is a contraction that brings them both together. So this is through the law of sympathy. And this would work on all levels. If you were training under Bruno, you'd most certainly be happy to do this for anything that you needed to attract into your life, whether it be allies or victory or financial things. I don't know whether Fludd would be quite so happy. Fludd's very much focused on you trying to get. You might have a contraction on pure knowledge. You might have a contraction on love. You might have a contraction on truth. But you're going to be focusing on this. Bruno lists many methods to achieve contraction. You can fast until you're very, very open to these things. You can step out of yourself to contact something. But he really wants you just to do it through focus and memory. So what you're doing is, to make this happen, is you're building up the memory image. So you remember the angel of truth? Every time you put in a bit more detail, you're helping your mind rest on it longer. So it's like you're building the sympathy in you with the truth outside. And so the memory image becomes more and more clear. Your routine becomes stronger and more powerful. Bruno, for example, gets to the point where he says, listen, things which are constant, things that are always there are not questioned. They are true. Make the image in your mind there constantly, and it will be true. You'll be at one with that. That your shadow will form. You'll be at one with the idea. So you're going to build up this sense of sympathy and this connection with these good things. And this involves sitting, looking at the image in your mind's eye that represents that quality. But in the rest of your life, you're also going to invite and you're going to learn about it. You're going to connect with the people who represent it. You're going to have open up in every way. You might even have an object to do it. If you're going to open up to the pure idea of fortune, you'll have a statue of fortune. If you're opening up to pure beauty, you're going to allow that to come into your life in other ways. And eventually you will achieve a state of ecstatic oneness. Now, like in the Oriental traditions, there is an idea that this can gift you with a supernatural influence. So we read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. It's absolutely clear that you can gain the strength of an elephant by meditating on an elephant. In this practice, there are examples of using this technique for miracles. We have Judo Camillo, for example, using this as an escaped lion that's killing people. He goes into his memory palace, becomes at one with Helios, comes on with the sun, and uses solar influence, and the lion lies down and he can stroke it. So this is the kind of idea that it would leave you with some of the qualities of that concept you're meditating upon. This idea, of course, is very old, and it is hinted at in many traditional texts. But here are some overt statements from the Neoplatonic tradition. You can see if I got my Plotinus quote correct here. And this became part of the Christian tradition because many of the Neoplatonic students, they converted and took some of the wisdom with them. If you were studying under Bruno or one of his students, at this stage you would also learn memory wheels. The memory wheels come from the influence of Raymond Lull, and these are used in many different ways. First of all, they are used to correct or improve thinking methods. If logic is maths, these are algebra. So it could be used to transform your personality by practicing certain ways of thinking. Let's imagine that you kept thinking in a certain habitual way, and this was causing problems or making you make mistakes. You could artificially form a wheel that had all the decision-making pathways in it, and you would practice. Now, this is really hard to visualize, and I'm going to make a video explaining this with actual wheels that turn at a later point, but I'll give you an example that you might be able to imagine. Imagine if you, in the middle of a wheel, they had something that showed speech, maybe a speech bubble. And you could make a wheel which had other symbols on it. It could be the first wheel just has two sides to it. One side is a feather representing truth. The other side is a feather crossed out representing falsehood. The next wheel would have a different two set of symbols. It would have something like a hand representing necessity and a hand crossed out saying not necessary. The third wheel would have a heart representing kindness and a heart crossed out. Someone rotating this wheel would practice the correct principles of when and when not to speak. I want to speak. Is what I'm saying true? No, I remain silent. Turn the wheel. I want to speak. Is it true? Yes, it is. Is it necessary? No, it's got a crossed out hand. No, it's not. I remain silent. Turn the wheel. I want to speak. Is it true? Is it necessary? Yes, it is. Now, is it kind? So this will be used to train you so you only spoke when it was true, necessary, and kind. Well, they were doing this kind of reprogramming of the mind using these wheels for advanced things. Like if you often made a slight incorrect judgment on logic, or if you spoke in a way that wasn't quite what you were trying to express. These wheels would also be used for, in a completely different way, for achieving that contraction. You can meditate very, very deeply, even if you're not talented or very well practiced with the wheel. So let's imagine that in the center of the wheel, you can see that one with the letter A. Let's say A stands for forgiveness. And you and I have prearranged all different associations with the other letters. So we're going to meditate on forgiveness. A, forgiveness. And we'd sit there and really get the feel of forgiveness, really get that feel. And then we'd combine it with B. And B is me. So forgive me. Now turn the wheel. C is my family. Forgive my family. Now turn the wheel. Then you'd go through in each association, forgive my family, forgive my friends, forgive strangers, forgive my enemies, forgive the laws of nature, forgive divinity. You'd go through and you'd be on forgiveness for so long, you would achieve that oneness with it. This could be used for love. This could be used for bravery, that kind of thing. They're also used for contemplation of different principles. So you memorize the first whole wheel, which is intentions. That's the ones I'm quoting. And the second whole wheel, which is conceptions in Bruno's system. And you combine the two into a third state. And that's very much like lull. So it's a kind of musing things out, leading to a higher consciousness. And finally, these would be used for memory practice. So you can use your memory to recall things which are practical. So each letter has got a figure representing or an object or an action, and which could be combined, kind of like in those memory palaces. Please make a note that there are the planets in this wheel, because that leads us on to the program. You would be working with a hierarchy at this stage. This is a big ecstatic part of your path. You're probably going to be wanting to live or be close to your teacher. You've gone through all the character development, and this is going to be serious. The invocation of an angel through meditation on them in your palace could be overwhelming. And you need to be ready and you need to be gentle. Sitting, looking at Venus together, becoming at one with that pure sense of love and attraction, or sitting, looking at Jupiter and that sense of authority and power. This needs to be handled right. And the hierarchy needs to be done in order, because as you get further up, it can get a little bit harder to deal with, and you need to learn to deal with the powers that appear, which will be natural and depending on your talents. I just wanted to mention here the hieroglyphic monad, John Dee's figure for contemplation. Here's some exciting things. I noticed in the hieroglyphic monad that John Dee says you should put it in your creative memory. So, ooh. So to Dee, was it like a memory practice? If as well as a contemplation, was that how it was viewed? And I read the text again and again and thought, yes, this is a memory practice where you're going to become at one with each planet through the symbol, and then you're going to combine them all in the monad inside yourself. Later on, just a few weeks ago, I couldn't believe it. I read in a diary of one of Bruno's students that they said, the wheel rotation, of course, is just what you do with the hieroglyphic monad of D, moving up the planets in order, then combining them in one in your memory. Wow. So I've got a contemporary reference that shows you the program. If you're training under John Dee, you'd be starting off with the easy lower planets, learning to achieve contraction upon them, and moving up through them, and all this puzzling out and musing of that monad, the different symbols is going to help you. The puzzling was part of your meditation, and eventually you combine them all to achieve your adepthood or your eudaimonia. That's at least what the interpretations of contemporaries had at the time, as well as my own. And this is the important aspect here. So this path up was seen as the golden chain. And you see references for this in many of the texts on memory at the time. You are going to achieve in contraction or oneness for your memory as you walk up a chain. And there's different programs they use. So some will take you through the deacons, some will take you through the mansions of the moon. Others would have the Kabbalistic tree. You've probably seen them, Fludd's tree, which is upside down, and that's based on the quote from the Asclepius. Through the planets, through the scales of order of existence, so maybe you'd meditate on the mineral kingdom, and then plants, and then animals, and then humans, then you'd go up these things. But there would be a program. And this comes from, there's a quote, it's from the Iliad, when it said that if Zeus was to throw down a chain, a golden chain from Olympus, you could pull on it. And in fact, all the gods could pull on it from the bottom, but he's not coming down, and the Olympus isn't coming towards Earth. But he could just give you a quick pull and you'd be up in heaven. So it's kind of saying you're going to be ascending upwards. You're going to be going upwards towards these higher forces in your contemplation. And the whole concept was that this would happen on all levels. So as your consciousness evolves, outside you is also going to change. So your eudaimonia, your flourishing on all levels, will be reflectant. So when you master a principle, it will have a powerful vibrational effect around you. You're bringing heaven to earth. You're making everything around you work. You're bringing everything into harmony and achieving this adepthood through your memory practice. So that concludes my talk today. And may the different principles and practices mentioned draw you closer to your eudaimonia.